Okay, so this is a new video that I wanted to do to flesh out some details that I may not have fully developed, or I may have outlined in other videos, but that there is more that could be said. And I'm not going to summarize everything I've said in other videos. They're all the ones related to spiritual awakening, enlightenment, self-realization. They're all worth listening to completely. So that's all I'm going to say on that. But what this video is about is spiritual teaching models. And I've kind of broken it down into 4 basic spiritual teaching models, which could all be integrated together in various ways. But those 4 models are the questioning spiritual teaching model, the experiential language or language of enlightenment spiritual teaching model, the methodology spiritual teaching model, and the transmission spiritual teaching model. And these are all kind of, this is just a general kind of outline of the different ways that you can look at spiritual teaching and spiritual paths and approaches, if you will, to coming to self-realization or enlightenment. That all of these processes can kind of go together. You know, you can have questioning, you can have methods, techniques, practices, you can have a teacher that has transmission or power or energy that helps, and you can have a teaching that gives you kind of a language of enlightenment, or an experiential language, a kind of language that helps you to come directly to this awareness without any, kind of intuitively rather than through some method or any other kind of process. So that's just the general outline of it. But the way that these spiritual teaching models work, they work according to the same basic principle. The whole purpose of all spiritual teaching models is to defocus or displace your awareness. Period. Okay? And the way that this is done is 3 main ways: through awareness, or turning your awareness, taking your awareness and turning it inward or going backward with it, or through space, which is taking your awareness and taking it outward, not outward into objects, but outward or externally outward from your body and your mind, your psyche. And then the third kind of pathway is oneness. And oneness in the sense of you're taking your awareness forward into and between essentially the objects that you see to kind of get at the underlying oneness. So you have essentially 3 spiritual teaching models: questioning, experiential language, and methodology. And then, energy transmission is a 4th one, but I don't think it's, strictly speaking, it could be a spiritual teaching model, but it's not, it's contingent upon the teacher's energy, so it's not something that I'm going to develop much further. That's something that has to be cultivated separately. But these 3 pathway, this defocusing or displacing of awareness from the physical body, from the psyche, and doing so through awareness, space, and oneness, these are the general outlines, the guidelines for crafting and working with any of these kind of spiritual teaching models. So I'm just going to walk through it simply and just kind of get to the essential points of it and keep it as simple as I can. When you look at the questioning kind of process, of this questioning process, which is aimed at coming to self-realization or enlightenment, which has been kind of popularized by the interest in Ramana Maharshi and his method of self-inquiry. I can say more about that, but I just want to say that there's something there that's larger than just self-inquiry. It's this whole questioning process. It's not just as simple as who am I? There's a lot more that can be developed in a questioning process. And so, again, there's three different ways to look at the questioning process. Questioning essentially from the standpoint of awareness, questioning from the standpoint of space, and questioning from the standpoint of oneness. And so when you go down each of these, I'll just kind of go through each and just kind of spell it out. When you're going through a questioning process and you're trying to ascertain through a pathway of awareness, you're trying to ascertain what your awareness, or trying to ascertain, what is awareness essentially, or how do I come to this awareness? Your basic question is, who am I? You're trying to find out who you are, who your ultimate identity is. Who am I? And so that is the basic question. Now, it's not a mental repetition. It is not who am I, who am I, who am I. It's not a mantra. It is a real question where you're trying to look into and find out who you are. Now, of course, if that's the only question you have in a questioning process, it may or may not be very helpful, and it may not get you very far. So taking it further, you can say, okay, who am I? And you can inquire further, well, what is my center? Where is my center? How do I find my center? So that's taking it to another level or another direction. And if you can locate your center, you can locate your awareness. The next way you can look at it is self-inquiry. At this who am I process is not just a question of who am I, it is or a mental repetition, but it is also a turning of your awareness inward. So you're actually turning your awareness inward to see what your awareness is, where it is, who it is, what it is, how it is, all the rest, where it is. Another way to look at it is that you're trying to kind of find your beginning. That whole notion of finding the source of your life, the source of your thoughts, the source of your experience of self. So you're trying to get back to the beginning. Where do I begin? Where is my beginning? What's my beginning point? So that's another way to look at that questioning process. Another question that you can ask along those lines, the pathway of awareness, is, what is awareness? And not just coming up with some simplistic answer. Awareness is this, it's that, it's this. That's irrelevant. What you're trying to ascertain is, by looking into it with your own awareness, to ascertain what awareness is. What is awareness? What is my awareness? Another question you could look at is, what is inside? So when you start looking in, not just asking what is inside myself, but actually turning your awareness inside rather than outside, and try to ascertain, to experience directly what is inside. Another question that could be related to that is, what knows? Not just who knows in the sense of who is this knowing, because that could just be you trying to objectify yourself into an object and say, I am this, and define yourself. But you reframe it and you say, what knows? Try to ascertain. Don't assume that anything about it. Just ascertain, what is it that is knowing, that knows? And try to look into your own knowing with your own knowing to know your own knowing. And So the next that's awareness. That's a questioning a process where you're using awareness as your pathway. Now, a questioning process through space is a little different. It's a questioning process just the same, but it's a little bit different. The orientation is different. You're asking a different question. It's not who am I, but what am I? What am I? What is my basic nature? What am I? What is my composition? And you're not going to be interested in some easy answer like, well, I'm this physical body, or I'm this mind, or I'm this, that, or the other. It's more a question of what am I? What is my basic nature? And what is the fundamental nature of what I am, my existence? And what you're trying to do, rather than trying to find your center, you're trying to find your boundary, your limit, your extent. You're trying to say, where is my boundary? What is my limit? Not what is my center, but what is my boundary? What is my limit? Is it my skin? Is it my thoughts? Is it my psyche? So you're trying to ascertain what your boundary is. And you're also taking your awareness, and you're taking it, instead of taking it inward, you're taking it outward. And when I say outward, I don't mean outward into your senses. I don't mean outward into your thoughts and emotions. I don't mean outward into your environment or your relationships or other beings. I mean outward into space. You're kind of taking your awareness and taking it outward into space. And what you're trying to find is the end, essentially, not the beginning. When you go in the other questioning process, you're trying to find your beginning. Where do I begin? What's the source? In this questioning process, you're trying to find the end. Where do I end? You're trying to extend and expand your awareness, this questioning process, and your awareness in all directions, outward in space, and to say, where do I end? Do I end? Where is my end? Where's my extent, limit, boundary? And likewise, a relevant question along those lines is one of what is space? So just as with the other questioning process, you're asking what is awareness? In this process, you're asking what is space? And you're not taking any kind of silly scientific notions. You're actually directly trying to perceive for yourself what is space, what is the nature of space in reality, not in fantasy, but in reality. And another question is not the question what is inside, but the question what is outside. In other words, here's my experience in my mind and my body, right? And I'm not trying to go inside to get deeper than that, but I'm trying to go outside of it. And this notion in the 60s of expanded consciousness or transcendent consciousness or whatever, there's some literal truth to that. What you're trying to do is say, what is outside of my body and mind? What is beyond it? What is outside of it? Not just what is inside of it, beneath it, behind it, but what is outside of it? Another question that you can ask, rather than what knows, as in awareness knows, right? That's the answer. But what fills? What is it that fills everything? What is it that fills every being? What is it that fills all of space? What fills? What fills everything? And trying to ascertain what that is and identify it. So these are questions. When you're applying a questioning process, these are the kind of questions you ask when you're trying to do a questioning process through space. And then you have a questioning process through oneness. And so a questioning process through oneness is something else entirely. It's similar to the other two, but it's different as well. So